Welcome to Ride for Rights. Ride for Rights is a bike tour across America. I'm riding town to town in hopes that people will join me, come together on the four rights of freedom of speech, justice, education, and unity. If you'd like to come ride with me, check the schedule in the comments and see when I'm near your town. In addition, Ride for Rights promotes FIRE, Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, the Southern Poverty Law Center, the American Immigration Council, and the American Library Association. They need your help and please consider donating. Hey guys, so I messed up the file for the intro, so I'm just going to talk over this while we watch the beginning scenes. So I had food poisoning yesterday. That was a wonderful 4 a.m. wake-up call, so I missed main St. Louis ride, which we're doing today. Today, the goal is to basically do 3 days of riding in one. The first section will go to Hudlin Park from my hotel. The second part will be the St. Louis ride from Hudlin Park to the Gateway Arch, which is 5 miles. And then the final part will be the Gateway Arch to Edwardsville. So total, it's supposed to be 45 miles. It was actually more, which you'll see why. Last video we talked about, had a lot of trouble finding a hotel. Found out Chris Stapleton and Kesh are in town, plus a large Little League tournament, and actually there's a couple weekend conferences, so that's why the whole city seems to be out of hotel rooms. I'm not feeling great in the morning. I do start feeling better throughout the day. When I was doing the intro, I was definitely not sure about how far I would make it today. And then what also I didn't explain well later is the St. Louis ride, nobody showed up because I switched the day at the last second. So one of the people that was gonna ride with me on Saturday said, why don't you come to this? They're doing this protest safety ride because there's concerns about rider safety in St. Louis, and it's only one extra mile for me to get there, so I end up joining that group ride later. So you'll see that. All right, enjoy the music. guys, we just did over 20 miles. We're in the tennis courts at Hudlin Park, seeing if anybody's going to show up. Again, I didn't move the day to day. There's a ton of bikers here in St. Louis, so all over the place there's people biking. They have Forest Park, which I just went through and you guys saw. St. Louis's version of Central Park. They had separate like bike trails and walking trails, and you could fish. I saw the art museum. There's also like a science museum there, so it was set up very similar to Central Park. It was very nice. 5 miles to go till the Gateway Arch. Hey guys, we made it to the Arch. So our last stop in Missouri. I did like the first mile of a 12-mile ride they were doing for Bravlaw Safety Ride. They were doing it to promote safety in St. Louis, which is a good point because it honestly, like, the cars for riding aren't that good here. There's not a lot of bike lanes, and when there are, the cars don't really watch for you. So it's good they're doing it. I hope they have success. I met some fun people, but now we're here. It's already almost 1 o'clock. There was a big downpour. So we were actually just sitting inside a pavilion at the group ride for about 20 minutes. It's still raining on and off. We're gonna try to get to Edwardsville. I didn't really eat much yesterday, so I'm starting to fade, so I might end a little earlier. Onward, let's get out of Missouri. Hey guys, we're in Edwardsville. It was a much longer day than I thought. So I thought we were doing 45 total, ended up being 55. That was because in the beginning we had to take a detour because an underpass was closed. That was a few miles. Group ride for about an extra mile and then 2 miles back. Plus it was like a mile out of the way. From the arch onward, we took the riverfront trail, which was partially closed, partially open. So we were winding through that. I ended up having to take like the casino parking lot through to get to a frontage road. And then the ride through Illinois. The beginning was nothing real special, but that trail that we took all the way here was great. That was awesome. It was really nice. It was pretty, it was shady, it was in decent condition. St. Louis was cool. This was the last city that I knew nothing about coming into it. I've spent significant time, I would say, in Chicago, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and DC, which are our last 4 cities. So I know roughly kind of where to go in those, also like about kind of the vibe and what's happening. St. Louis I've never been to, so it was cool. The arch was totally worth it. I think it's awesome. It was cool to see. The museums looked really nice. If I could check it out, I was bummed out I didn't really get to try the food because of the food poisoning, so that would be something. I would come back there. The safety is a little weird. So I was talking to some people around there and they said it's kind of block by block if you're in a nice or bad area. The Clayton area is kind of the nicest area of St. Louis, and there's stuff to do, like nice restaurants. There's like a Ritz-Carlton there. It's like a upper end. That being said, the downtown area, and I'm going to bring this back to the riverfront, the trail we did. During the gravel ride, I was talking to some people, and one of the guys said there's a significant amount of biker deaths in St. Louis, and they're trying to do something to improve safety. It was an awareness ride, not a ride where they had a solution for engineering or bike lanes. St. Louis was interesting. It had similar infrastructure for biking as Kansas City, but there was a ton of bikers I saw all day, even though the weather was garbage. And it was all over the place, all ages and stuff, but there's no bike lanes. So it does give the philosophy of, you know, if you build it, they will come, or are people going to bike anyway if there's interest, and then you have to make the infrastructure around it. I don't know, this is weird because there wasn't really infrastructure in St. Louis for it, but there was a ton of people biking. It made sense in the other towns that I went to. Salt Lake City had a ton of bike stuff. Denver has tons of bike lanes, trails. California has tons of bike lanes, and you saw a lot of bikers, but it made more sense because it was much safer environment for them. Here, it's a Sunday and there's a ton of people really into it with a lot of like really nice gear. And when I was talking to people at the group ride, they kind of were telling me, I'm like, oh, what do you do? And it sounded like there was a lot of groups for either hardcore riders, middle riders, or there was a lot of like party groups where you not just ride to the bar and back and stuff on your, you know, regular commuter bike. That being said, one of the things I think from going from city to city, the reason I think they struggle is one thing Colorado does is you have to have a 3-foot clearance between the car and the bike. And police officers in Colorado will ticket you if you don't do that. And I think that would help significantly. Secondly, the road they were going down was the Gravos Road, I think. That's a diagonal street. So St. Louis is set up as a grid and they do a diagonal. You usually don't want to put the bikers on the diagonal street because you get weird intersections. You usually just want to keep them on the grid. But that's where they had a bike lane on the Gravos Street, not in many other roads. So that was an odd choice. The other thing St. Louis does that the cities we've been to do, and the cities we're coming up to actually all do, is they all have riverfront or lakefront trails. The Mississippi Riverfront Trail I got on, I was excited for it because I thought it was going to be this elevated trail. You're going to look over the Mississippi River, and that's how I say goodbye to Missouri, and it's going to be picturesque. I'm going to eat great shops. No, it's a retaining wall. You're like 40 feet in from the river, and it was really dangerous. I would not want to be there at night. I didn't want to be there in the day. Usually that's a marquee area, and that reason is there's no crossing, so you don't have to worry about cars going over and back. You can just have the road and then have the bike on a separate bike lane next to the road, and they, you know, there's never cross. So I thought that was interesting. No one kind of made a larger effort to do that when it's something that's kind of a thing that's done around America. I think would be a good start for St. Louis is going with more of a Salt Lake City philosophy. Have bike lanes that make sure they go to all the public transportation so you at least get to the trains. It's like kind of a commuter idea. You don't have to make the whole city a bike infrastructure good, which is difficult for older cities because you have historic buildings, and then to widen the streets or take away a lane either ruins the traffic engineering. You have to do something with a historic building. A lot of the roads outside the town that just didn't have bike lanes, they just had those signs that said share the road with bikes, which is least effort. There's definitely space to put a bike lane if they wanted to do that, or just a shoulder. Interesting town. I'd come back here to check it out more. I want to try the food. My hamstring started bugging me again a little at the end for just a few miles, so hopefully I'll ice that, I'll get better. I don't want that to kick up again. It was doing really well for 2 weeks. Tomorrow we're going to Lynchburg, a shorter day, so I'll probably sleep in a little bit, get a little more rest. We're in Illinois, another state down. I did forget this. The one thing that was crazy is I went over the Mississippi and it was kind of cool, but I feel like I'm east now. It's weird. I got over it, and it's another state line. It's exciting, but like once I got over and down, I started going through Illinois. I just felt different. I don't know how to explain it, but it definitely feels like that was a major accomplishment, even though I kind of didn't bookmark it as such. It's starting to rain harder. See you guys tomorrow. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and check out my socials and the charity links in the comments below. Thanks for watching.